I hate the Breath of Evil plotline. Hello everyone, and welcome! Today I want to talk about the third arc. I've spoken about it before, and y'all probably know I'm not a huge fan. I feel like the quality of writing really dropped from the second to third arcs. I do want to talk a bit about my thoughts on that today, but since I don't believe in complaining without offering a solution, I also want to talk about how the third arc might have been changed to be more interesting. So, let's go through the arc as it is. First, Book 11. Although I have some reservations and issues with this book, overall it was a pretty good start. It introduced a new place and a new problem from the eyes of a character who was empathetic enough to give us a good insight into the opposing factions. I feel like plot-wise it could have been a bit stronger. Some elements, like the hole in the wall of the top-secret fire silk prison that allowed Wasp's super important prisoners to escape, felt contrived or forced. But overall, I feel it's a good start. Although I would change some things, it sets a pretty good scene. We have a clear enemy, a clear problem, and a good cast. I like Luna and Swordtail a lot in this book. I feel like this is the best version of them that we see throughout the series. Later on, the both of them get dumbed down, I feel. Swordtail gets relegated to the dumb, funny male character, and don't even get me started on what Book 15 did to Luna. So, Book 11 is a solid beginning. And I think Book 12 was a good addition. Now, we see this huge issue from the Hivewing side. Although Cricket herself is not abusive to Silkwings, she comes from the side of the culture that thinks they are born better than others. I do feel this should have had greater attention. I just feel like they had Cricket as the standard I'm good even though I shouldn't be character, and that's both unrealistic and a missed opportunity. Even if she wasn't cruel to Silkwings herself, like some Hivewings took the chance to be, Cricket could have been portrayed as an unwitting ally to their crimes. Consider, Cricket was raised in an insular society of a tribe where they thought they were superior. Silkwings were always wrong, Hivewings were always right. She has inherent privileges simply by being hatched a Hivewing. So imagine a Cricket who had her good heart and tendencies toward kindness, but a healthy dose of naivete as well. Perhaps her quests for knowledge and discovery often harm Silkwings, indirectly or otherwise, but she doesn't stop to think about that. Or she excuses cruel actions of her peers because, well, that's just how things are, and she doesn't do it herself. This Cricket is a quote-unquote good person, but she doesn't understand the real world enough to fully be a good person. Her arc would have been about realizing the Silkwing side of that equation, which Blue would have helped show her, and eventually the Leafwing side in Book 13. She would really struggle with the idea that some Hivewings are cruel simply because they enjoy it, and Wasp gives them permission. I feel like this would have had much more meaningful fruits at the end. Cricket would realize that the lack of knowledge doesn't excuse her. Also, small note, I was very disappointed with the Chrysalis in Book 12. I was expecting a serious Talons of Peace type underground rebellion, and I feel like what we got was kind of silly and meaningless. I think it would have been more interesting to see a real Silkwing resistance, and how their goals would have clashed with the Leafwing resistance. This isn't a case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. These are three very different factions here, all with three very different goals. Anyways, I liked Book 12. It dove into the culture of the Hives and began exploring the main villain. It was a good setup as the build-up to the main conflict of the arc. Book 13 is somewhere in the middle for me. I liked it, and the end had me really, really excited, but this is the book where we see the Breath of Evil. It's the beginning of the end. I love the plotline about the Leafwings using the plant to attempt to end the war, only for it to backfire on them. This introduces our main characters to a fascinating moral quandary. Wasp is evil, but the Leafwings did the same thing she did, or they tried to. But this is the book where they also decide to give the plant sentience, which for me was the beginning of the end. Book 14 is a wild card, and not in a fun way. Now don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the update on Pyria, but the whole plotline with Breath of Evil and fleeing the continent, I don't like it. It's so random, and the pacing is just so wonky. Usually in a story, you have your intro and build up, then the tension slowly ramps up as you work your way toward the first climax. The fake win, if you will. Then the fake win fails, and you have your lowest low. Things are worse now than they were when you started. All seems lost. And then you have the climax, your highest point, before we drift slowly back to the resolution. So, Book 13 was our middle climax, a literal fake win. And the end of Book 13 was our lowest low. Book 14 ought to have been the characters dealing with the lowest low and working back up to the climax, not a complete spin to a different continent and cast and a new story and no resolution whatsoever. The pacing is a huge turnoff for me. And I like this story, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't belong in the Pentallan arc. And finally, Book 15. The biggest letdown of all. This book was slow, meandering, it had no tension, I didn't care about the characters, it butchered Luna, ignored all the issues with the Hivewing and Silkwing conflict, and was just very disappointing. Now, like I said in my video about the Flames of Hope, if you enjoyed this book, that's good. I can't be upset about someone taking joy from a book. I'm sure Tui put a lot of hard work into it, and I'm glad some people like it. For me, though, it was pitiful compared to the incredible climax of Book 10, or even Book 5. Okay, so there are my overall thoughts on the Pentallan arc. 11 and 12 were good, 13 had potential but was the beginning of the end, and 14 seemed like it belonged in a different series, and 15 was awful. Now into the good stuff, how I would have rewritten the third arc differently. So Book 11 stays largely the same. It needs some polishing, but the core plot elements are solid. Book 12 also stays largely the same, except for a few differences in characterization. Cricket would have had some of the differences I talked about from earlier, and Blue and Sundew would both play a part in waking her up. Also, I would focus more on the major differences in their little group. You have dragons from each of the 3 tribes who do not get along right now, and that would cause serious tension. Differences in worldview, goals, and mythology would raise a lot of friction, and I want to see more of that. One of Wings of Fire's biggest strengths, I think, is the characters. The cast is large, diverse, and written with good intuition, which draws people in. Also, the Chrysalis would have been a real serious thing, with at least some influence. Especially since we got a peek at blossoming intertribe relationships, this could have been another example set for Cricket, but also for Sundew, who herself has a very narrow-minded worldview. This version of the Chrysalis would have been a good setup for future allies and actions. I think I would have also set up a future alliance between Lady Scarab and the Chrysalis, and maybe Lady Jewel too, once they realize the truth about Wasp's lies. They'll all come back into play later. So then we get to Book 13. This is where my real changes begin. We start off largely the same, coming to the poison jungle to hide. I love the reveal that Sundew's Leafwings are a tiny rebellion inside of another rebellion. It just adds another level of nuance to the situation, and I love it. I keep everything the same until they go to find Hawthorne. This encounter goes much the same way. He's a little cracked from being in exiles for so long, they get the supposed cure from him, and then they go on their merry way. They prep for their big battle, hoping to burn the antidote so that it cures the Hivewing army. Now in this AU, Wasp is the main villain. Without the breath of evil to mastermind it, I think she would be controlling the Hivewings because of the effects of the plant mixed with her own natural venom. Hence why she was actually able to command other dragons when that has never happened before. So in this story, instead of the plant making Hawthorne attack Willow and the group, Wasp does this. She's been watching through his eyes the entire time. How she managed to infect him would be something that would need figuring out, but it's still more solid than a plant with a brain. So, while Blue and Swordtail are off to try and cure everyone, Hemlock/Wasp tries to force the remaining cast to take the breath of evil. However, they manage to escape, killing Hemlock and making a break for it. The book ends about the same, with everyone coming to the horrible realization that the root they thought was the cure is the same plant that Wasp uses anyways, meaning that it is useless. However, without the sentient plant to be in charge, and without combining the poison with her own personal venom, this doesn't mean Wasp can control the Silkwings or any Leafwings caught in the crossfire. However, it does mean her vastly superior army is still very much mind-controlled and dangerous, so she manages to capture a lot of dragons, including Blue and Swordtail. We are at our lowest low now. Cricket and Sundew believe all is lost. However, we still have a bit of wiggle room where the heroes have the chance to fix things. I kind of hate the whole Pyrean exile plotline too, to be honest with you. I just think it kills the pacing, and I don't like it. It's hard to put my finger on why. In this AU, Luna didn't get blown across the sea. I think if that were possible, the whole continent would have seen some visitors by now. She instead was injured and stranded on the coastline, blown just far enough that Swordtail couldn't find her. In this, Luna is the main character for Book 14. We are in full diversions territory now. The book starts with Luna waking up, stranded on the coast, with injuries making it impossible for her to fly. Towering cliffs protected her from capture as they block the view of the coast from above, but they also mean she's trapped. Unable to fly and too injured to attempt to climb, Luna is forced to wait, either for someone, friend or foe, to find her, or for her wings to heal. Soon after, the book opens with this false calm, which, by the way, as a writer, is the kind of sneaky agony we love to impose. There is nothing better than a huge defeat and cliffhanger, followed by a hard cut to a fake piece that you can't skip because it might be important, but that drives you nuts waiting for the resolution to the previous cliffhanger. Anyways, the fleeing Silkwings and Leafwings stumble on Luna, who is informed, to her horror, of everything that has happened. This is when we sink back down into the pacing and plot of the main story. False peace shattered, reality resumed. Everything is worse than it has ever been before. Blue and Swordtail are captured, Wasp seems to have won, and all seems lost. So this book for me would have been all about the Leafwings, Silkwings, and Hivewings, at least those remaining in their little group, finally being forced to come to an accord. Up until this point, the series has had one book from each tribe, and it's highlighted how divided everybody is. Everyone wants something different. They all only care about themselves, and sometimes even the tribes are fractured. Different Leafwings have different ideas on revenge and justice, and some Silkwings would rather stay second-class citizens than risk war. Even though most dragons agree that they hate Wasp, everything else is a huge mess. So the first part of the book is a lot of conflict from the remaining factions. However, after a few days of this, with scouts reporting on Wasp's movement and the capture of everyone else, Cricket snaps and just shouts at everyone to sit down and talk this out. She says that if Blue had been there, he would want them to work together and see things from each other's point of view. Luna, who is still written like her Book 11 fiery personality, would realize that Cricket is right, and she would help convince the Chrysalis. Finally, Sundew, Willow, and Hazel would agree to calm the Leafwings down so that they can have a productive conversation. They realize that they need to decide on goals that they can all agree on, so that they'll all be able to trust each other and work together. Heated discussion ensues. Everyone gets their 2 cents, and now, finally, we have all the sides of the story for the reader to discover along with the cast. Everyone agrees that Wasp is the crux of the issue. Some Hivewings don't like her rule, and those who do use it as an excuse to be cruel can be dealt with once she's out of the picture. Cricket, who has come to learn that not all Hivewings are good, agrees with the other 2 tribes, who have come to realize that not all Hivewings are bad. The Leafwings want back into the picture, and the Silkwings want their own territory and government back too. But of course, the most immediate goal that they share is to take out Wasp. Since she controls the dragons with her venom mixed with the breath of evil, if they can kill her, then the army is done for. From here, the rest of the book is a mix of preparation for when they attempt to kill Wasp. They establish spies and scouts to keep an eye on her whereabouts and guards and weaknesses, tapping back into the Chrysalis and Lady Scarab and Lady Jewel. Wasp is keeping high-profile prisoners close, but she doesn't actually have the ability to mind control everyone all the time, so most of the everyday common Hivewings and Silkwings are left to their own devices. Luna and the Resistance group use this to their advantage, learning all that they can to make their plan foolproof. The book ends on a relatively calm note. They have finally figured out Wasp's location, and more importantly, found a way to get in. This is a soft cliffhanger, because this is the part of the story where we're still building up to the final climax. We're picking up the literary pieces from the mid-story failure and low point, and exploring the behind-the-scenes work of what really needs to change for them to win. Killing Wasp isn't enough. This is the book where our characters realize there is real social change needed from everyone if they want this to last and not just be the beginning of another war. And now we get to Book 15. Who, you ask, will be our main character? And without Keebly's few lines of dialogue to make the entire book any kind of worth it, what will it be about? Well, dear viewer, the main character for this book is Hazel. I like Hazel a lot. I think she had squandered potential. We've had Leafwing, Silkwing, and Hivewing perspectives. Hazel is the closest thing we have to a neutral outsider. She's young, she doesn't have personal experience or vendettas beyond the battle from Book 13, and most importantly, she's the current Queen of the Leafwings, the only character other than Wasp with official political status. These reasons all make her a good candidate for Book 15. Also, I do agree that Book 15 needs to focus on healing and empathy. However, Luna was the wrong character for the job. Hazel is quieter, more contemplative, and wiser despite her age. She has the ability, but more importantly, the humility, to step back and learn from the situation and the mistakes of her ancestors. And, moving into the future, she has the power to foster real changes. So Book 15 starts with the setting in motion of their big plan. It has several parts. One part is to free the Fire Silks, and take those who will help them to assist in the attack on Wasp. Another is to get word to the remnants of the Chrysalis and the few Highwing allies they have. A third relies on Lady Scarab, who is the key to getting closer to Wasp. She'll let them in, giving them a chance at the Queen. This is also important later on because with Scarab's involvement, it cements this as an action of all three tribes. Cricket and Bumblebee are outliers, excusable. Lady Scarab is an important and well-known figure among their tribe, and her involvement lends them a degree of legitimacy they couldn't get with two dragonettes. The climax of the book is the actual plan being put into motion. Hazel is part of the main group, and most scouts and messengers report to her, so she gives us a good view of the big picture. Without actually sitting down and writing this for real, I can't puzzle out all the minute details, so this is more of a rough outline of what I might write, so forgive the vagueness. But essentially, this is a very action-heavy book, to balance out the more talking and planning book that 14 was. Not without setbacks, they managed to rescue the prisoners, including Blue and Swordtail, and they succeed in finding and killing Wasp. I think Luna and Sundew should get to do it, frankly. Sundew is eternally furious, and Luna has real reasons to hate Wasp, and the gumption to do the deed, too. This doesn't solve all of their problems right away, but it is a start, and it frees all those under Wasp's mind control. The epilogue of Book 15 is the final piece to the puzzle. It gives us a bit of a time skip, letting us catch a glimpse of Pentala's future and good things to come. We see the tribes working together, at least in part, to fumble their way into this new era. It's a short glimpse, but it lets us know that things are on their way to being healed. Alright, so, I do really like this idea of a rewrite. I feel like it's a more serious story, while still being interesting and having heartfelt scenes and characters and real tension. With a series this old, it's good, if you can, to age with your original fans, even while appealing to new readers. I feel like the Arc 3 we got didn't appeal to old-time fans very well. This is a really rough idea, and if I were to actually write it, I would definitely sit down and iron out all the real details and fact-check everything. But for the purposes of this video, it's good enough. It shares my ideas on what I would have liked to see and why it would have been an improvement. Again, no hate to Tui. Every author has different opinions, and nobody knows what thoughts and efforts went into Arc 3 but her. These are just my personal thoughts. If you agree, that's great, but if you disagree, that's fine too. What do you guys think of this? Would you have liked to see an Arc 3 more like this Pentallan plotline, or did you really enjoy the arc we got and think it is still better? Feel free to politely let me know in the comments. It's neat reading people's thoughts in these kinds of theoretical debates. Also, about the art, can I just say, I love this piece. It was so much work, but it was so worth it in the end. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far, and please have a wonderful week.